By now, most of you have seen my reaction to Abraham Lincoln, American Dictator. It's been a unique experience for me, and that's why you're seeing a little reactception going on here with my video on the screen, because I'm going to do something I don't normally do just because this has been such a unique situation. What do I mean by a unique situation? Well, what I mean is that I've had videos where I've disagreed with the original content creator before. Probably nothing to this degree, and certainly nothing as forceful as I did with this one. Probably the only thing that comes close is my disagreement with Atten Shea Films over his assessment of Gods and Generals. And I had a few of Atten Shea's fans come and kind of tear into me, and you expect that, and that's part of being a personality on YouTube, I guess, is that you're going to get people who disagree with you and disagree passionately, and I'm used to that. As all of you know, I say often I read every comment on every video, and that's true. I've never seen anything quite like this, and it's really interesting because typically in a video, a two-part reaction like this one was, there'll be similar views on the first one to the second one. More on the first one than the second one, but similar. I'm getting about 5 times as many views on the first video as I am on the second one. And it seems like there's an inordinate amount of people who are fans of RAZORFIST who are coming just to tell me how stupid I am and how much of a slave to the government and the establishment I am. So I thought it might be fun just to read some of the comments that they have left. I don't normally do this, and if you are not one who really cares for the snarkier side of vlogging through history, this might be one to avoid. But let's dive into some of the comments that have been left. Warning, not all family friendly, and a lot of them have been filtered out by YouTube, and I've had to go in and manually approve them so that they could show up. Let's dive in. First of all, I should point out that the average rate at which I get comments compared to the number of views means that on a video with 100,000 views, I should have on average about 500 comments from viewers. What does this one have? 3,500 comments. So that shows you a little bit of what I've been dealing with. 3,500 comments on a video with 100,000 views. And typically, my like to dislike ratio on a video is about 99 to 1, right? So I get 99 likes for every down like. So, and you can't see those. YouTube doesn't show those anymore. This one's been about 92%. So it's been about 92 to 8. So it gives you a little sense of things. So here's one I thought was particularly interesting. I don't really believe in the official version of events, so it's more likely that RAZORFIST is correct. And I'm going to try not to comment too much on these unless there's something specific that I can respond to or refute. A very common one that I've been getting has been piling on to the fact that at the beginning of my first reaction video, I said if it takes you 1 hour and 7 minutes to make your point, it's probably full of crap. And so a lot of people have said, if it takes you 1 hour to convince someone you're trying too hard, makes hour-long video, and somehow mocks the fact that my response to his video is a total of 2 hours. Hey, if his video had been 20 minutes long, then my response wouldn't have had to have been 1 hour long. I am only breaking down his video, okay? So not a very solid argument to make that because mine's longer than his, somehow it undoes what I said. Oh, I like this one a lot. This is Carolyn. She said, he's got more followers than you. Expand your horizons. Had you not done this, I wouldn't know who you are. So yeah. Okay, he's got 349,000 subscribers. I have 346,000 subscribers. Okay, not really a strong argument there. Just saying. We're about the same. And also, having more followers doesn't make you more right. I'm just saying. There are plenty of people who are far more brilliant at history than I am, who have way less followers than I do. So number of followers does not equal more right. Just saying. This is so pedantic. You may be technically right on the details, but this just reveals the weakness of a response like this instead of a discussion. No rebuttal. Mine is the rebuttal to his, and I have been told he's planning to rebut that. That's about as close as you get as a discussion on here. This is another common one that I'm getting that I feel like I need to refute. They over and over again tell me that I'm wrong because at one point in the video, he pointed to the disastrous Battle of Fredericksburg in December of 1862 as being one of the reasons Lincoln was desperate and put out the Emancipation Proclamation to change the war aim because he was desperate that they were losing. And I pointed out in the video that Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation a few days after the Battle of Antietam in September 1862. And people keep saying, well, I did a 10-second Google search and found out that the Emancipation Proclamation was issued on January 1st, 1863. So you're wrong, and he's right. No, it took effect January 1st of 1863, okay? He actually first wrote it in the summer of 62 and waited until after they turned Lee's army back at Antietam to issue it in September of 62. It took effect January 1st. My whole point was that you can't say Fredericksburg had anything to do with the Emancipation Proclamation, which had been announced several months earlier. A 10-second Google search is no replacement for decades of study on a historical subject. Okay, just saying. Okay, this one is great. It is clear you watched the video previously. No, I hadn't. I always point out, if I've seen a video before, I will point it out at the beginning. I definitely did not. How is it clear that I watched the video previously? Exactly. I think sometimes people think that because I'm able to respond to things off the top of my head, that therefore I must have planned it all. Listen, I don't have the kind of time to go through and watch a video like this, plan out all my responses, and then interject with them, okay? Maybe your brain works like that, mine doesn't. So it's clear you watched the video previously and came up with cherry-picked counterpoints. But if you critically think about the whole video, you have to conclude he is right. No, actually, if you critically think about what he's saying, quite the opposite is true. Oh, boy. Tomfoolery is one who has left something like 20 comments on this video, some of which I've had to go in and approve manually because he was commenting point by point. This is one of my favorite ones here. 1849, he tags and says, he's quoting me, "You told me a little while ago that Andrew Jackson was an authoritarian figure. I'm confused." And then Tom says, "Yeah, I'm confused too, because he never said that." All right. Let's go to 503. RAZORFIST never said that Andrew Jackson was an authoritarian figure. There we go.
To their citizenry. And if Andrew Jackson, himself something of an authoritarian, was the first of the
Himself something of an authoritarian. All right. Establishment historian disagrees with a different take on a highly controversial political figure. Shocker. Not really that highly controversial. He's by and large pretty much accepted by everyone as one of our top 3 or 4 presidents of all time. Very few people disagree with that. Establishment, me, yeah, I don't think so. All right, I wanted to show you some more of Tomfoolery's greatest hits, so we're going to take a look at some of these here. So at 4150, he says that war criminal advocates, I'm not going to say it because I don't want to get demonetized, of women. And then VTH says, well, technically they were assaulting soldiers, throwing stuff, and it is war, you know. And then brutal war criminal gets shot. Rageaholic seems pleased about it. VTH, wow, literally advocating murder. Listen, Benjamin Butler issuing a decree that says if women dumped their chamber pots, basically their bathrooms, on Union soldiers, that they would be considered women of the town, was not advocating for them being assaulted. It was advocating for them being treated as criminals. Listen, basic history comprehension is your friend, Tom. It really is. Okay, so when the British government in 1812 owned property that the U.S. fired on to start a war, like all of the U.S., I mean, I feel a little silly having to tell someone far more historically literate than me this, but the British owned the colonies, to which he actually acknowledged I got him on. And I said, listen, the British in 1783 signed a treaty that said that wasn't their property anymore. The U.S. signed no such agreement over Fort Sumter. All right. This part about the Corwin Amendment is a bit confusing. This is one a lot of people have commented on too. When I said that the Corwin Amendment, which was an amendment that was attempted to be passed, never got ratified or anything, by Congress after secession began, that would enshrine the right to slavery in the Constitution as a way of trying to avoid a civil war. And he made the argument that that proved that secession wasn't about slavery because it didn't bring the South back into the fold. And I argued it proved just the opposite, because he kept saying over and over and over again that it had nothing to do with slavery. And yet I was arguing that, yes, that proves that the North understood what the South had very clearly stated, which was that slavery was the primary reason for secession. But the reason the South didn't come back is because it wasn't just about slavery. It was also about the expansion of slavery, because without expansion, eventually it was going to die. Oh, I like this one too. Glad to find out a person indoctrinated by the rulers found they weren't the bad guys. Yeah, you know me. If there's anything that's true about me, it's that I've clearly been indoctrinated by our rulers. This might be one of my favorites. And I'll just skip to some of the highlights here. So, sorry, but while the founders disagreed, yes, the Constitution is not a disagreement. Yeah, it definitely is. There was a lot of compromise that went into that Constitution happening, and nobody liked the compromises. So there was definitely a lot of disagreement in the Constitutional Convention. The Declaration of Independence is not a founding document. It has no bearing whatsoever on our government. It was a statement of reasons for our separation from the British. It has no basis in our laws whatsoever. Our laws are not based on the Declaration of Independence. And declaring your position right doesn't make you wrong or even effing suspect. If it does, I so look forward to your videos chastising Fauci, evolutionists, supporters of the moon landing, etc. These are all people who claim their position as the only position, and they're probably right, as I imagine you think they are. So if you state that a fact is right, then you're doing the same thing as him. No, the difference is he's expressing an opinion and saying it's the only right opinion. Whether the moon landing happened is not an opinion. It's just something that happened, right? You can state the facts of things Abraham Lincoln did during office, but we can disagree about whether or not those things he did makes him a dictator. The problem is, not only does he express that opinion that he was a dictator and say it was the only opinion, he then goes on to back it up with a bunch of things that aren't actually facts. That's why it matters. You obviously weren't paying attention to what the video was about. He wasn't arguing that the war was about slavery. He was saying Lincoln was a dictator. Pay attention, why don't you? All I did was respond to the things he said, and he spent a good bit of the video. He started by saying, listen, I am not a lost causer, and then proceeded to spout all of the main talking points of lost causers. He spent a lot of time in his video talking about how the war was not about slavery. It was about tariffs and taxes and economics. I was just responding to what he said. Yes, the title of his video was Lincoln was a dictator, but he spent a lot of it arguing points other than that. I just responded to him. Okay, this is a good one here. I really got to say, most of what you debunk, in quotes, here sounds incredibly, actually, snort, and reeks of, quick, gotta defend the narrative. My professor said X, not Y. It genuinely seems like you're not trying to hear his points at all because you're too busy running defense. For example, actually, snort, Lincoln wasn't at his funeral. He was at a funeral commemoration. Like, come on, how is it relevant? Here's how it's relevant. If you are going to argue that you understand things better than all of the people out there, all the academics and all the professors and all the historians are all wrong, and I'm going to tell you the truth, you've got to get your facts right, okay? If you're going to try and make an argument that runs counter to, as you see it, the establishment narrative, prove them wrong. So that means get the facts right. And so when you say things, when you're making an argument that Lincoln was super closely tied to Henry Clay and that evil Henry Clay is the one who inspired Lincoln to be the dictator that he was, which he does repeatedly, then when you say things like, Lincoln stood up at Henry Clay's funeral and said this, yes, I'm going to call you out on the fact that Lincoln wasn't actually at Henry Clay's funeral, and he was at a memorial that honored him in his hometown, in Lincoln's town, nowhere near connected to Henry Clay. Oh, this one's fun. VTH, you absolutely lost to RAZORFIST when you cherry pick his points of contention in order to torpedo them. So I lose when I point out his facts are wrong? And Virginia is not the Deep South. Well, good, because I never said that Virginia was in the Deep South. I think what he's probably referring to is that I said that in responding to the fact that RAZORFIST said that Woodrow Wilson was a Northern academic, I said, no, he was born in Virginia and raised in the Deep South. Those are two distinct statements. If you're going to cherry pick, get it right. He was born in Virginia, but he grew up in Georgia and in the Carolinas, okay? And he eventually went to Princeton and became a professor there. And yes, he had a doctorate in history. Wilson was president of Princeton and governor of New Jersey before rising to POTUS. And I've got two words to describe the Garden State: Tammany Hall. Look at the two cities that bracket I-95 and the Jersey Turnpike: New York City and Philadelphia. So he brings up Tammany Hall, which was New York, to point out that that proves that Wilson was a Northern academic. The more you keep dismissing his points as irrelevant, the more he's knocking you TFO. So the more you prove him wrong, the more he wins, I guess. You don't understand what people are saying. You simple hear words. I don't understand what you're saying, actually, Cameron. You simple hear words and make an argument. Razor is showing a quote of Lincoln's true beliefs prior to tacking office, and regardless of speech, EACH, speeches to get elected, these were his true intentions all along, which he began engaging in immediately. Words have meaning, but yours don't. But phrases and paragraphs need to be understood as a whole. He's saying this quote represents what his beliefs and real intent were long before he was elected. You lack the comprehension level to even be doing this, space, period. I think what you're trying to say is that he was using single quotes to prove not only Lincoln's beliefs, but also what was most important to Lincoln. Remember, he used one quote of Lincoln's from long before Lincoln became president to argue that that quote represented what Lincoln was most concerned about as president. And yeah, I debunked that because you can't do that. This is one of my favorites because, as I often point out, when you can't win the argument on facts, you resort to name-calling and personal attacks. So this is a good example of that. I'm sorry, who are you? As he's commenting on my channel. You're a nobody, a pathetic little nobody, a pure nothing propagandist and authoritarian brown-noser posing as a historian, which you are clearly not. All right. Thanks, Star Commander Dunadan, son of the West. Just checking, because I wanted to know who this guy was that was so clearly showing what a nobody I was. 3 subscribers, no content. All right, got it. This is a fun one, too. Right at the same time that he said RAZORFIST is based, he also says, VTH is the guy that reads the wiki and thinks he's smart. Yep, that's what I do. You caught me. I did all of that off the top of my head because I read a couple of Wikipedia pages. And somebody asked me, Task32 said, thoughts on him calling you a Bolshevik boomer in one of his streams. I guess after I did the reaction, he referred to me as a Bolshevik boomer. And if it wasn't already clear that he has a real problem with actual facts and logic, I should just point out that, number one, a Bolshevik's a pretty left-leaning guy, and I'm pretty conservative politically. And my parents aren't even baby boomers, let alone me. I'm Gen X all the way, so whatever you say, man. All right, this is one of the ones that I haven't yet approved, but I'll prove it here in a second. 3922, Darman Beskar says that I'm so full of, you know what, you don't need an argument response, you need a laxative. And he's specifically referring to the fact that I said that West Virginia wanted to remain part of the Union, and therefore that's why they formed a state that was separate from the Virginia, which seceded or attempted to secede from the Union. I'm full of it on that one. This one's actually a response to another person's comment. Do some research. Everything RAZORFIST said was true. And if you were here listening to this dude, you're not smart at all, matter of fact. You're a slave. This one I'm a little confused about. Lincoln went to war with his own countrymen. He was absolutely a dictator. The South asked Lincoln for only a year or two to capitulate to the North's rules on slavery and other things that would take time to correct because the South was the economic powerhouse of the states. But Lincoln didn't want to give them time and wanted a civil war to weaken the South and kill his own countrymen over something the South agreed to fix if they were giving time. By the way, if it takes you multiple videos and parts to argue his points, shows you may also not have a good point. What about a lot, one word, of Southern slaves that asked to continue working that the Southern slaves that asked to continue working on their master's land after the war? Do you understand at all why they ended up doing that? Do you understand anything of the history of Reconstruction? Oh, yeah, a lot of them did end up working on their former masters' plantations, but not because they had other options. Many slaves fought for the South voluntarily, and even after the war, they marched proudly in Southern uniforms and local parades. Facts. Oh, wow. Truthfully, I always hated this channel given that it is the most disgusting thing on YouTube. You know, where you take someone's original and unique videos, I guess that's what we're calling it, and superimpose your face on the lower corner and ramble on. But hell, not all of us are creative. Man, if it's so easy to build hundreds of thousands of subscribers just doing this, why isn't everybody doing it? Seems like you're missing out on an opportunity there. Sorry, Laffy Blitz. This is a good one. Wow, you're a real Lincoln apologist. Why do so many people love Lincoln? He is the worst U.S. president ever, followed by Woodrow Wilson and FDR. Best were Jefferson and Jackson, probably. But then again, I'm not a socialist like you. Yeah, if there's anything that describes my political leanings, it's certainly socialism. I'm an anarcho-capitalist. You love big government. Yep, got me there. You don't love liberty. I'm so glad that Booth killed Lincoln. Only wish he'd done it sooner. Booth was a hero. Lincoln was an anti-constitutionalist dictator responsible for hundreds of thousands of deaths. He was evil. And no, sorry, butt boy. The Civil War was not directly about slavery. It was about economics primarily, and indirectly about slavery only because there was so much money tied to the slave trade. Lincoln was a Whig. The Whigs were evil dictators who didn't support the Constitution and wanted a big top-down central government. The Whigs didn't believe in individual liberty. By the time of the Civil War, a lot of Whigs had infiltrated Southern politics in an attempt to overthrow them. All right. The amount of copium in the comments. You really will do anything to stay within the matrix, huh? And then somebody says, it's funny AF, him just trying to justify tariffs. It's akin to Neil deGrasse Tyson defending COVID policies. Okay. VTH spends an hour making virtually no strong rebuttals, just a rehash of the typical government-loving, establishmentarian, academic talking points, reinforcing how the great statist, centralist, federalist Lincoln was, and defending his tyranny and genocidal actions on account of emancipation. This is actually a pretty indicative of a lot of the comments I see that basically say, well, yeah, he might have got a lot of the facts wrong, but you're still more wrong. You seem pretty partisan in your responses. I watch both channels, and so far I'd agree with RAZORFIST's take, although it appears he gets many details wrong. Overall, Abraham Lincoln and many politicians responded aggressively instead of sympathetically and turned a conflict into a conflagration, one of the worst failures of diplomacy ever, exacerbated by Lincoln's penchant for apparent tyranny. And we'll wrap it up with this one. Needless to say, there are hundreds of comments like this, many of which you guys won't see because I've had to go into the held for review section because of some of the stuff they say. But those of us who are from RAZORFIST community have no reason to watch your video or take it seriously, and yet you are by the thousands. Your community basically proved why we can't take your videos seriously. The fact that your community resorts to name-calling, death threats, and overall hate, as I've just read you a bunch of things where their community did just that, shows that your community, and you by extension, are not worth our time to actually engage with you. It also seems that something you have forgotten is that the history books are written by the winners, which in this case was the North, and that thus basically they wrote Lincoln as a saint. Any real historian would know this basic rule of history. Who's writing all those history books if not the real historians? I don't know. And no, history books are not all written by the winners. I mean, the whole lost cause narrative proves that. But I'm going to wrap it up right there. I think we've done more than enough of giving attention to this. I have no intention of making any follow-up videos or response videos to anything he says about me. I thought this would be cathartic to kind of get this out of my system a little bit. Now we're ready to move on, and that is the last attention that particular video and that particular community will be getting from me. Back to some lighthearted, fun history tomorrow. Thanks for watching.